everyone. Welcome to another edition of Thought Leaders Live, where we talk with thought leaders in business, life, and all points in between. Today, we're talking with Alina Doran, founder and CEO of Highline Leadership. It's a boutique advisory firm that partners with executives and teams at critical inflection points. Alina, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your own personal background and all about Highline Leadership? Because the two are very intertwined with your work history. It's very interesting.
They are, right? So Highline Leadership is very much about those key inflection points in the professional world. And you're right, it does all tie together. And those inflection points, folks that we often partner with are going through, if it's an individual or if it's an organization, they're going through big change, or they're in a place they haven't been before. So they have new frontiers that they're now wrestling with and navigating through. And that can look like post-merger acquisition life on the other side, post-IPO, post-reorganization, right? There's a lot of turmoil in our economy, in our world. And so through, during, or on the other side of big changes. And it can also look like I've never been here before perspective. So I've never managed this many people before. I've never been in C-suite. I've never been on the board. I've never had this much spotlight, and had a role this visible. What now? And so it's folks and organizations that have achieved a level of success. And now something's changed and something's new. And to get to a new place, just like I've relied on folks and teamed up to help me get out of my own way and my company, and continually working with various modalities of help. I help those people. I help people and organizations to get through theirs. You asked me about my personal journey.
Right.
And so I spent over 20 years in the corporate world. And when I say corporate, I mean quite a range from startups, pre-exit companies, all the way through Fortune 100 enterprises. And I spent those years in a number of disciplines. And so my own inflection points in pivoting what I do, who I do it with, and in what industry. It's a journey that I very intentionally took to more closely match what I want in this life with what I do for a living, to get those closer and closer and closer over time. That was the journey. So professionally across corporate finance in that world, to business development, and then business operations world. And all through that, there was a through line of the work that I did, sort of concurrent to those roles, where I worked with leaders, sometimes behind the scenes, sometimes formally, to really help develop, whether it's messaging, careers, perspective, strategy, mend relationships, or negotiate through difficult, spiky situations. Come and manage teams that were disoriented and in fear mode and didn't necessarily want to be managed, or not by me, or not by my organization. And really coming in compassionately, and joining, and really listening and persevering.
So you mentioned this through line to get you to do the kind of work you really wanted to do your whole life. Are you there? Is this what you're doing right now?
It's like, it's happening. This is it. Yeah. Yeah. The realm of work that I am doing now is it's soul aligned. There are two places in life where I feel absolutely aligned to my purpose and in this lifetime and how I best serve. And one is when I'm with my two children as a mother. I feel completely aligned, and this is where I belong. I am made for this. And the other is this realm of work. of, it's taking the curiosity I had as a little girl and just fascination with how humans work and what makes them sad and what makes them happy and how they relate to each other and how do they hide from each other. How are they, where's the squishy part, right? The vulnerability, the shame, the anger, all of the emotions that so many of us walk around hiding and shielding. That was always an absolute fascination. And so getting to work with people to both on the strategy, hard results that are, objectively observable, right? Like there's a promotion, there's a new career, there's a team that's completely turned around, there's a reputation that's rehabilitated, observable results with what's less observable immediately.
As a little girl, you were interested in this?
I didn't have the words and I didn't know what it was called.
Okay.
And yes.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. That's really fascinating. Why don't we pivot a little bit and just get into a bit more about the kind of work you're doing? We talked about a little bit, or in the show description, when the pressure is high, leaders and executives are defaulting to behaviors that create toxicity in the workplace. What kind of toxicity are you talking about? Can you give us an example?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the toxicity, there are a lot of behaviors that we all engage in at one point or another, often when we feel stressed under pressure, and we revert to what I call our default factory settings. When our guard is down and we're not thinking, it's our first response. And the responses are often for the sake of self-preservation. They're not, most of the time, for most of us, the intention is not to harm others. It's not to do damage. It's to survive, for us to survive.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight. Very much, animal kind of responses for survival. And so it's not necessarily scheming and I hope this hurts kind of an approach, but more, what do I do to be okay here? What do I do to be safe? And those behaviors can look like, if you've ever been in a meeting and someone is doing a whole lot of talking, a lot of bravado, but they're not actually adding value. And they weren't the one who actually did the work, but they're presenting great. It's a lot of words. You hear their voice a lot, not a lot of substance. That's one way, right? It's the, I'm going to be visible at all costs. Another might be not being willing to delegate, right? The one that takes on the role of a martyr, right? I have to work through the weekend. Do you think I enjoy this? I can't delegate this. No one knows how to do it as well as I do. This place would fall apart without me, right? If I have to save the team. I don't enjoy being away from XYZ. This is what I have to do. Right? So there are behaviors that are destructive to ourselves and to others. And there are many, many examples of these in the work that I do on workplace toxicity. Those are a couple.
How do you get to the root of what some of those problems are? I mean, I think a lot of our fight or flight instincts and reactions, sometimes they're tied to a lot of personal issues. And you bring that kind of baggage into work. Could even be from your childhood. Does it go that deep, or how do you approach it?
Well, how does one approach it in the situation may be different than how we, show compassion. There's definitely room for compassion, right? So you're right. So many of us are bringing in unconsciously whatever we're carrying around in our backpack, our figurative backpack, whatever the insecurity, whoever we're trying to prove ourselves to, wherever we don't feel right, or how often folks feel like a fraud, right? Like, I don't belong here. They're all going to find out that I don't know. And so I'm going to work my darnest that they never find out, right? Yeah. Or mom and dad were not proud of me. They were always comparing me to my brother.
Yeah.
and I am going to show you. When they spend decades showing, and showing they do, right? They get, the titles, and people go to the right schools, the right titles, the accolades, the recognition, and something doesn't feel right. So, but in practical terms, we're in a room with a person who's engaging in a behavior, and by the way, it may very well be us, engaging in that behavior that's unhelpful. It's very defensive, and it's blocking progress, right? It's blocking, in practical terms, like a project from getting done if you're at work, a conversation with someone very important to you if you're out of, in or out of work. It's really blocking the people involved in the conversation from seeing each other and really understanding what's in the room and how to get to a solution.
So it's really workplace performance that it's affecting. Let's talk about the cost of it, the cost of toxic leadership. What unchecked stress behaviors cost organizations? I mean, you listed a couple things: attrition, disengagement, lost innovation.
Yeah.
Maybe you can detail that a little bit more, and then talk a little bit about why working harder isn't the antidote.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you just, brought up workplace performance. So workplace performance is the one place where we would see that toxicity, right?
Okay.
You would see, so if we're looking at it in terms of an organizational perspective, more holistically, you see the performance being impacted, right? You see team performance is impaired, right? You're also misallocating time, you're misallocating resources, you're becoming less innovative. Perhaps there's fear in the environment, and people are they're maybe a little anxious, a little reserved to put themselves out there and take a risk and propose an idea, because what if it's not the right idea? What if they'll be punished in some way for sticking their neck out? And so oftentimes, after a while, there's a deterioration in their motivation, in their investment in the role, in the quality of the work that they do. That certainly translates to turnover, talent drain. So it's really quite a chain reaction. When you have enough people who have this in having to endure a culture, people leave, right? And you have this turnover. Who leaves? Typically, it's the folks that have other options, or they're so burned out that they can't take it anymore. And then who's left behind are the rest of the folks to carry the weight, to pick up what the other person left behind. They live with that toxicity. They live with the trauma of seeing it unfold before their eyes. And they're still there to kind of pick up the pieces and be with what's left in this wake of having seen perhaps, someone be mistreated or disregarded, unappreciated, and they're getting to witness this, but they want to be safe. And so they keep quiet and they keep enduring, right? And so as they endure, these people, what ends up happening is their health declines, their mental health, their physical health, right? On an individual basis, they're going to be less productive. They're going to see themselves differently. They're going to be showing up as the smaller version of themselves, probably have a little bit less respect for themselves. They're going to then probably do work that is not worthy of who they really are. And it doesn't reflect what they're really capable of. And that then affects their reputation. So on a macro scale, it's a company that becomes less competitive. Because when you have leaders whose teams are afraid to tell them the bad news or the new ideas, you're becoming less competitive. You're not meeting the targets, you're not meeting the deadlines, or you're meeting the deadlines that perhaps were thought to be important, the metrics that were thought to be the ones, and nobody dare to tell the team, the leaders who make the decisions, like, hey, we might be tracking the wrong thing. We might be chasing the wrong thing. The temperature is different. Something's changed in the environment. We need to respond differently. And so companies become less agile, oftentimes as a result. And then, then you get the terrible reviews on Glassdoor.
Sure.
But I was at an event, a professional networking event a few weeks ago, and I saw a friend who used to be a partner in a financial services firm, a very well-known one, and he pulls out his phone and shows me a picture of the top of his head, and he shows me his bald spot, and I was like, okay. And he says, what do you see? I said, I see thinning hair. And then he leans down and shows me his head, and he said, look at this. What do you see? I said, that's a huge difference. I thought he was about to tell me that he flew somewhere to have a procedure done, like a hair transplant procedure. It turns out that what he did was change firms.
Wow.
He is a partner at another financial services firm with a completely different environment, different culture. The toxicity's gone. It's a year later. His hair started growing back. His hair started growing back by itself. He did not have any procedures.
You might not need the Rogaine. You just might need to go to a different workplace.
Yeah,
it could be that simple.
Maybe that's like the Rogaine.
Let me ask you this question, Alina. So what you're describing and the individual you've described, I'm sure I've seen this person before. You've seen it. Anybody listening to the show has seen this person before. How does this person, though, come to you and say, I want to move away from that? It almost seems like these individuals, to me, they almost, I can't imagine them reaching out for help or reaching out for coaching. Just thinking, listening to this and saying, oh boy, that's me. Or does that happen?
It does sometimes happen. I will say, if we're talking about so one-on-one modality, right? You're talking about one-on-one versus working, partnering with an organization where people like this person work and know how important it is to have the kind of environment that fosters support for people who then are engaged, who then care, who then want to show up and want to make things better, and they're motivated. And they understand what happens if you don't invest in your people in a thoughtful way, in a substantive way, not just slogans and not just getting to say, I have a program, but really working with people for them to feel supported and understood and for real change to happen. So the way they'll come to me oftentimes is reputation, recommendations, referrals. Folks will talk about me. I'll say, somebody talked about me behind my back. And then I get an unexpected call that will say, I am told I need you. In those situations, like I'm told we need to talk, or I heard you talk about X and it felt like you were describing me. And it turns out that maybe I've worked with someone who's walked a journey that's very similar to theirs, and they see themselves in that journey, and they'll reach out. So it's typically one of those two ways.
So there might be a degree of self-awareness enough to know that they might be distantly aware that they have some of these behaviors, and maybe they're like, to your point about shame before, they're ashamed of them. They might want to change, they just don't know how.
They might be. And what often happens, unfortunately, and this was the case for me, and how I started working with folks and asking for help, is there needed to be enough suffering and pain to then, tap out and ask for help. A moderate amount of help was not enough for me. It took a great deal of suffering, and it took physical illness for me, a series of physical illnesses, and to then say, okay, I can't do this on my own. I need help, right? I need help to understand how I process, how I view what agency I have and where, and stop the cycle. Yeah.
So you yourself have experienced the toxicity on your own level.
I definitely have. And, I've been very, very fortunate with vast majority of the folks that I've been fortunate to work with and, worked for me. And I've, my colleagues, my peers, my former bosses, for the most part, I've been very, very fortunate. They've been wonderful. And there certainly have been, a bad apple or two. And that's really all it takes, because it takes one or two toxic folks to really kind of poison the well, and make it really difficult for so many for years. So yeah, I definitely, the framework that I have developed from years of my own, bruises, scrapes, and experiences and hard earned wisdom, as well as my colleagues and my bosses and the clients that I've journeyed with. So it's really it's a distilled through line of what was my secret sauce, like is it that I did through all those years of work in the corporate world. What was it that I always did and had, and what was it that I observed, what worked best, and what do I wish I'd known earlier that would have saved me a great deal of pain? That's how it came to be.
Right. So Alina's worked at JP Morgan, Bank of America, Tesla, not saying that any of these things happen there, but you have worked in big corporations.
Well, I'll say I've worked with leaders.
I'm sorry.
Leaders in those corporations. And myself, I've also worked with, in some big names, as well, big and small. But yeah, you're talking about some of the clients.
I'm sorry
that have worked there.
I'm reading the wrong notes. Disney, Paramount, New York Times. That's where you you worked at those areas.
Yes, this is true.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just one quick follow-up. So were you in it, just so I clear this in my own head, some of that toxic culture, you were feeling it as an employee. Were you feeling it? Were you ever delivering the toxic culture as a leader at some of those? Were you ever in those positions? And if yes, what did it feel like to get called out on it?
That's a great question. So yes, I've been on the receiving end. Again, it was there were anomalies, right? For the most part, I got to work with wonderful people who, sure, they had missteps. They're human beings. They're in, but we work through it. There's the missteps that we all make that where we're unaware that what we're doing is unhelpful and not serving. And then there are the bad apples who are aware of the pain they're causing and they're continuing to do it.
Yeah.
Right. There's like there's a bit of a sadistic or bullying, nature of, again, these are the bad apples and the exceptions of, something like, well, I went through this on my way up. You think you're going to have it easy? You're going to have some pain too.
Yeah.
Right. Or when folks are, cliquey, right? Grown-ups can be cliquey too. It's like middle school, but grown-up style and with power. And when you're responsible for other people's careers. So unfortunately, on an exception basis, I've certainly seen a degree of, there can be a vengeful type of spirit. I think for the vast majority, it's folks who want to do well, to do good and to help and do great work. Okay. And sometimes it's the pressure of deadlines, the pressure of what's happening in the rest of their lives that's just entering the room and in the room with them. And under stress and under pressure, they may, make choices that they're just not aware of, that are blocking great conversation, that are blocking candor, trust, where the conversations that need to happen, where you can really access, great solutions that are innovative and what you need now. Maybe folks feel like they need to have this air of formality and an air of making it shinier and making it over-engineered and maybe not what's needed, right? Because people aren't willing to engage in discussion about what's actually helpful and what's not, and challenge ideas.
Okay.
But you've asked me, have I ever delivered, and my own framework, working through the framework as I was building it, definitely made me, right? It makes, now I think thousands of people have been exposed to it and have gone through it and learned it. And I've certainly reflected on my own behaviors. And I've definitely been in my own way. Absolutely. I've been in my own way. There are 5 animals in my framework, and I've seen myself in those animals at times through my life, through my professional life, for sure. And out as well.
Good.
Go ahead.
Let's get into that framework, because we're running a little short on time, and I want people to have hope that there's solutions for their, this toxicity. So why don't you just cover some of your framework?
Sure. So real quick, the idea is that there are 5 animals that represent some of the behaviors that are unhelpful that we're unaware of, right? So these animals are not talking about the very few exceptions. Are talking about the day-to-day unconscious things that we do. So one is the peacock. The peacock is the example that I gave earlier of so it's creating the illusion of being larger than reality. The one that talks the most delivers the least value, takes credit for your work. Porcupine is the second animal in the framework. It keeps others at bay with push away, prickly behavior. So not being present, passive aggressive, not being willing to name what needs to be named directly, and really creating the impression on the other side that this is a person I need to circumvent next time around if I want to get anything helpful done. Animal number 3 is the turtle. The turtle retreats into its shell. It's afraid to stick its neck out. It's the one that will do the work quietly in the corner. And then when time comes to advocate for the work and speak up and confront, they retreat and they recede into background, and someone else picks it up from there. They're the one that doesn't have boundaries and says yes, because everybody else's priorities are more important than theirs, like the pushover.
Right.
The 4th is the honeybee. The honeybee is the martyr. That's the one that will, that won't delegate work to others, for example, because they're the one who knows how to do it best. So they have to do everything themselves, right? Or they don't trust others to do the work, so they do it. And so they end up burning themselves out, working through way past, efforting a lot more than they need to get the work done. They sacrifice for perceived common good. And, like, did you think I wanted to work through the holiday? I would much rather not, but I had to because I carry the team. And that really breeds resentment. It breeds sort of stifling your team, not letting them develop because you don't trust people with challenging, interesting, juicy work. So you keep it to yourself and you hoard. Very difficult boss to work for, and not a boss that fosters, learning and moving up. Right. So that's kind of a bottleneck to themselves and to others. And then last but not least, it's the cheetah. The cheetah is the fast acting one, the one that reacts and makes decisions while in an emotionally heightened state. And that's the one that will fire off angry emails. That's the one that will make snap decisions. If they only paused, if they only took into consideration 30 seconds, what's in the room, what's happening, something different would have happened. What happens with cheetahs often is there's a ceiling that they hit in their career trajectory. They don't make it to the top oftentimes, especially when they're seen as unhinged and out of control. And so when we work through what can you do about it, we really work through the realms of the words that you use, the body language, the self-calibration, and the context around. So being really aware of the surroundings of other stakeholders, who's in the room, how often are you meeting? So many factors that we take into account and work through scenarios on a case-by-case basis, applying this framework. Really, the first place where it starts each and every time is within, to come in aware, clear, grounded, and making a conscious, intentional decision on how you're showing up, right? And any preconceived notions that you're carrying with you as you walk into the room.
So then I assume that it's kind of the self-awareness, you're building that, but you're also probably building empathy for others as you are able to spot these types of behaviors in other people, and you're probably a little more, I'm assuming you help them deal with those types of behaviors as well.
Absolutely. Empathy for yourself, empathy for others. Oftentimes, sort of the way we're treating others, it's possible that it might be a mirror to how we see ourselves. So someone who is, impatient and unrelenting to others might treat themselves that way and be very unforgiving to themselves. So that awareness of how we talk to ourselves might be also how we talk to our team members. That inner voice might actually be the outside out loud voice. Absolutely. It's helping work through what is being threatened, what feels unsafe, what is being stepped on that's important here. Is it their integrity? Is it the sense of competence, sense of agency? Is it, see me, I've been here, I've contributed, I've made these big contributions, and you're just stepping on me and you're not noticing what I've done, and you're being presumptuous, and I'm resentful.
So you name it. What I've often heard this: you name it, you can tame it. Seems like that's a big part of this program. And then, so once they've named it, and the framework, is there additional components to the framework? We're at the top of the hour, but I don't want to cut you off if there's more you would like to discuss with the framework.
Absolutely. And maybe that's a sequel, but yeah, absolutely. Right. The first step that we have is an awareness of how we're walking in. And then we can see what's in the room, what's important, what is at stake in this room, what can be stepped on, and then understanding how those needs are being met without stepping on ourselves.
I just think it's so important that, we spend all this time on AI and operational systems and all the work and strategy, and you can't even get to some of those things if you can't get the interpersonal relationships straightened out first. So, I mean, it's like this should get priority if you want to get to all those other things in your workplace.
That is specifically the through line. It's no matter what challenges I've ever seen, I've ever been in, trusted to solve, whether it's, system or, big growth related, right? Or going public or reorganization, whatever it is, the humanity system conversion, right? Moving to a new system, anything I've ever laid my eyes and hands on, the humanity component has always been the heart of the problem. And once you've solved that, you really can get to, the right system at the right time in the right place that serves the needs. And you can then understand what the needs are and solve for what actually is the real need, and involve the right people in the room and at the right time, and really grow and thrive and have trust and enjoy what you're actually doing. It's beautiful.
I love the system, and I love the priority, that this has and should have with most leaders. So, Alina, thank you so much for coming on the show. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way to do that?
Well, they could find me on LinkedIn, Alina Doran. Not a lot of Alina Dorans. And the other way is to go to my website, Highline Leadership. Go there and find me there.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me on, Greg.
You bet.